Hi there, in this project I'm going to show you how to make a very simple axle system, and we're going to build on this axle system in future projects by adding different propulsions. But the very first thing we need to do is build a low friction axle system. Here we go. Here are the items you're going to need to get ready before you start building. So one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to cut your axle so that it is a little longer than the base, because you're going to eventually put a wheel on each side, and so it would fit like this. And you don't want it to be snug too much because it'll rub here and create a lot of friction. You want it spaced out a little bit more like that, and you're going to need it on that side and the other. So I can see the distance across my base is 4 inches, and so I'm actually going to cut my dowel so that I have some space on each side, and I'm going to give myself a little extra room. I'm going to cut it just about the 5 inch mark. So you can see what I've done is I've used the ruler and I've marked out 5 inches and marked it with a little green line about there, and I'm going to need to cut a front axle and a back axle. So then I also measured down the way a little bit at 5 inches. So I'm going to cut along those green lines, and then I'll have 2 dowels that are both 5 inches long. So now I'm going to heat up my glue gun, and you can see I've got it plugged in and I've got it turned on. This green light tells me that it's on, and as I refill my glue gun, I just put it in the end, and as I squeeze this forward, the glue will come out, the heated glue will come out this end. Of course, it is very important to think about safety when you're using a glue gun. Clearly this metal tip will be very hot, and it'll hurt a lot if you touch your finger or any part of yourself by that metal tip. And also when the glue comes out, when it is melted and it pours out, it'll be very hot. So you don't want to make sure you don't want to come contact with your skin at any time. So as my glue gun is heating up, I'm going to make some decisions about what type of wheels I'm going to use. And I have 3 different choices here. I have a CD, a small little wheel, and a large. Let me explore this with you a little bit. This wheel, if I make a little green line there, and I start rolling it at this spot right here, and we're going to see how far it travels after 1 revolution all the way around. If I rotate it all the way around, I'm going to get to here. So the wheel was in one movement of the wheel, rotation of the wheel, it moved this distance with the small wheel. And what you might predict is that if I use a big wheel, so if I use something with a longer diameter, if I make a little tick mark and I start it at my starting spot, you can see that for it to go all the way around, it's going to go significantly farther than the other wheel. When we attach the axle to the wheel, when we think about moving the axle once around, which would make the wheel go once around, it's going to have a different impact on how far that 1 revolution of the axle will move the vehicle. And so you can think about that, if it's important for you to travel a far distance, how you might choose a different diameter wheel. Just use the wooden wheel, something in between for mine. And again, you can choose to use different wheels for the front and the back. Those are all design choices. I encourage you to test them out and figure out which one you want to use. But once I have chosen that, I'm going to glue this axle right onto here. And I'm going to use my glue gun. And again, there's some things to think through here, is that what I don't want to do is put a whole bunch of glue right here, because that's going to get sticky and interfere with our axle system, and I'll explain that later. But what I want to do maybe is just put a little bit of glue, and I've got some there, and I'm going to stick my axle on like that, and I'm going to let it cool. And it's really important that my axle is straight up and down. I don't want it on an angle. So once it is dry, and this is almost dry, but I can peel this off a little bit, and I might choose to secure the glue a little bit more by adding some glue to this side. So what we want to do now is attach our wheel to our base. And you can imagine if we took our wheel right now and we just put it on the base, so we had it like this wouldn't be a good system because it wouldn't roll, it would just slide, right? We need for the axle to be able to roll like this. So what we're going to need to do is put in something that the axle can rotate inside. So one idea is that we could use, again, these are some giant design choices. We could use a straw, because if this was here and if we were then to be able to glue the straw to our base, our wheel would be able to move freely inside the straw, and we could fix the straw onto our base. So, you know, we could use a straw. Another idea, I think, in your kit is that you have a tube. Just trying to find where the tube is. Here's a tube. So the tube is another example of how it can move inside and then you can fix here. The challenge here with the tube, the way it is right now, is that you can see it's curved a little bit. And so there creates some friction just because it has a curve to it. And so we could cut that curve out of it, meaning that we could cut it here and just use it on this side and then cut another one that would fit at the top part. We could do that, or we could just use the straw. Those are some choices that you can make. I'm going to just use the straw. One thing I want to do is I can use the straw to an advantage. Remember I was saying that we don't want the wheel, you know, to rub so tightly up against the side of the car, creating a lot of friction, and friction isn't good if we want things to smoothly run forward. But if I have the straw inched out a little bit, it'll keep the wheel from rubbing up tight against the side of the. So you can see what I've done is I've used the scissors here to cut the yellow straw so that it is going to be holding the wheels outside of the base so it won't rub up against the base, but yet I have a little space here because I still have to put on the second wheel. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to, and this part is a little bit trickier to hold straight, but I'm going to take the wheel and I'm going to place this on here, and I'm going to have to hold it perpendicular, and I'm going to have to hold the straw up, because if I was to glue it like this right now, then when I let the straw down and it's not dry, the straw is going to get all wet glue, which will become gummy and is going to affect its performance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up this hole with some glue and then place this on here, and then hopefully hold it straight so it's at a perpendicular 90-degree angle so that my wheel will be on straight. And one thing I'm noticing right now with my wheel is that I can see how this pointed edge here, that's going to, and that's just how I cut it, and it's not going to leave me a lot of surface area to connect properly with that wheel. So what I'm going to do is I can use some sandpaper, or in this case I'm just going to trim this a little bit so I can get this right into the camera, so that I'm going to have some, just trim it so it fits flat across. I don't know. Okay, the glue is now dry, so I'm going to take it off, peel it off, and I have this little piece of paper in there, which is fine. And I can actually test how straight my axle system is by rolling it now on the ground. And so what I'm going to do now is make a second axle system using my dowel and 2 more wheels. The only difference that I'm going to do this time is instead of using 1 yellow straw, as I did in my front axle, for my back axle, I'm going to actually divide the straw up into 2 parts. And so again, I'm going to glue this onto here, and then I'm going to put the 2 straws on, just like this, and then I'm going to put the last wheel right up on top like that. All right, my second axle system is ready. So I have a front axle with the straw going all the way across, and I have a back axle where the straw is cut into two. And now I want to place them onto the base of my car. And this is important for me to do to make sure that they're straight. So clearly, if I was to put my wheels on in a crooked direction, see if I can do this in front of the camera. If I was to place the wheels on something like this, that would be crazy because my car wouldn't go straight. So what I want to do is place the wheels so they're go straight across and the base like this. And I also want to make sure that I don't place the wheels too close together. So I wouldn't want to put the base like this because the wheels would interfere with each other and run into each other. I want to make sure there's space evenly from the front and the back. So you can see that I've drawn two lines to show where I'm going to put the glue. And now I'm going to put some glue along those green lines, and then I'm going to place the the front axle on, the one with the long green straw. And I'm going to place it so it fits like that, and I'll get back to you. For the back axle, we've cut the straw into two pieces. And what I want to do before I lay the back axle on there is I want to create a little bit of lift. And the reason I'm doing this is because we're eventually going to add a propulsion system to our back axle. And so I want to design it to account for what we need for that propulsion system. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to use some popsicle sticks or just some small pieces of wood to lift these two the yellow straws up higher from the base of the car. So you can see that I created two spacers that I'm going to use to lift the axle up off the base. And these spacers I created by, where's my camera here so you can see, they're basically popsicle sticks, or I think it's balsa wood that looks like popsicle sticks. I just put 3 layers together so that it gives it a little bit of lift. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue them onto here so that when I place my axle here, I'm going to place the yellow straw, I'm going to glue it onto the lift. So you can see I've added the spacers to the back axle. You can see how it's just lifted up. And now I'm going to glue the straws onto those the yellow straws onto those lifts. So I want to show you a mistake that I made. As I was trying to glue my axle on, I used some glue that got on my axle here, and that's going to interfere with the smooth rotation of my axle. It's now going to gum up. So that was like a silly mistake, and I don't want you guys to have to make that same mistake. So before I go any further, I'm going to have to find a way to get that glue that's rubbing now on this away from the straw. But once I figure that out, I'm going to be more careful now about placing the glue so that it's not going to gum up my axle. Okay, I did a much better job this time of gluing my yellow straws down on top of my lifts so that I didn't get them all gummy with glue, which is good. And I also remember I wanted to keep that straw spaced out a little bit so that it doesn't rub. It keeps the wheel from rubbing up tight against the wheel, or against the base. So I have this and this, and then if I was to turn this, you can see how my wheel is moving, my axle is moving freely inside the straw. And then the front end, you can see, again, that this is rotating. And that's what we want. We want a low friction axle. And the more careful you are about how you place glue and using measurements will increase the chance that you have a low friction axle vehicle. And let's try and give it a little bit of a push and see how it moves. So it moves very easily, smoothly, without a lot of friction. So we're in great shape and we're done.